So this is video 6.2b, college algebra. We're talking about the circle and the ellipse, and I'm on page 536. We're just going to start talking about ellipses. There at the top it gives you a box where it gives you a definition of an ellipse, and it says an ellipse is a set of all points in a plane, the sum whose distances from two fixed points is constant. The center of an ellipse is the midpoint of the segment between the foci. Okay, so I'm going to draw a real crude ellipse because I'm not a real pro ellipse maker. And let's look at this here. We have 2 points in our ellipse, and they're called foci. Okay, and the distance between the foci, well, the midpoint between there, is what is called the center of the ellipse. So that's where that comes from. Let's get rid of some of that. It also says it's the set of all points in a plane, the sum of whose distances from two fixed points is constant. What that means is the distance between this point and a point on the ellipse and the distance here, whatever length those are added together, will be the exact same regardless of where I put those 2 points. So the lengths of these, when you add these two up, are always going to be the same length. Doesn't matter where I go, when I add all those up, they're all going to be the same length. Meaning, the length of this plus this equals the length of this plus this, which equals the length of this plus this all the way around. Okay, so that's the definition there. Just to help, this foci right here, one, we have 2 of them in every ellipse. If we're just talking about one, it's just called a focus point. The major, let's get rid of some of these white things. Yep. Alright, so I'll draw a new ellipse. Alright, we've got an XY axis here. Okay, the distance between here and here, the long distance, that is called the major. Okay, it's called the major axis. And the other one, from here to here, is called the minor axis. Okay? These points right here are my y-intercepts, and these points right here are my x-intercepts. So that kind of gives you an idea of what we're looking at. We also have a foci here, or a focus there, and a focus there. And our midpoint on this particular one is at the origin. They don't always have to be there, but that's how we're going to start here. So let's go ahead and label these a little bit. And let's just look at the green, the ellipse itself. So I'm trying to get rid of some of the yellow here. Alright, so this point right there is going to be 0, negative b. And this point right here will be 0, b. Meaning that the distance between the center and here is the same as the distance from the center to here. It's b long. It's just one's positive, one's negative. Alright, let's look at the left and right. So the right is going to be a, 0, and over here is negative a, 0. Because again, the distance from the origin is going to be the same to here. It's also going to be the same to here. Okay, so this is a and that's a, and this is just the negative direction of a. Alright, so let's look at the top of page 537 and check out some formulas there in order to graph these. And the formula that we're going to look at first is the standard equation of an ellipse with the center at the origin. And that formula looks like this. And for the most part, the A value, this one right here, is the major axis. So notice what they do. They put the longest axis on the x, or underneath x squared, which means my longest axis is going to be on the x axis here. Okay, so the A is going with the x here. So therefore, my longest line is going to be on the x-axis. So it matches A long on the x-axis. Now if I change this and set x squared over b squared plus y squared over a squared, and I set that equal to 1, the difference would be, there's my axis. Now I'm saying my A is going to be longest on the y-axis, so it's going to look like that instead. So it's just going a different direction. So just look and see where that A is. If it's under the y, it's going to look like this. If it's under the x, it's going to look like that. Alright, so let's look at a couple of examples here. So this is example 2, find the standard equation. So we're trying to find an equation with vertices at -5, 0, and 5, 0. And I didn't explain this a little bit ago when we're talking about an ellipse there. These points right here, the long ends are going to be the vertices. So that's what they're meaning when they're saying vertices. Alright, so and we're supposed to write the standard equation. So the standard equation is based on, first of all, where the vertices are. Now I just showed you the vertices were on, in this particular one, are on the x-axis because we're at -5, 0. That means we go to the left 5 and up or down 0, and to the right 5 and up or down 0. So our 5 and -5 are going to be our vertices. And we know our vertices are at the endpoints of our major axis. So I know that it's going to look like this, longer horizontally. Alright, so, and my foci are at -3, 0 and at 3, 0. So I know that and I can graph it, but they want me to find the equation. So here's my equation. Because my A is my longest one and it's on the x-axis, it's going to be this equation right here. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to fill in the numbers for A and B. That's what I'm interested in doing. What is A and what is B? Alright, so if you look at the top of page 537, it gives you, for one thing, it tells you what vertices are, and it says the vertices are going to be at -A, 0, and at A, 0. Okay, which means here and here, -A, 0 and A, 0. And that's what I'm looking for here. Well, what is my -A and my A? Well, up here, it's -5 and 5. So I know my A is going to be a 5. Let's see what else I've got up there. It also says that my y-intercept is going to be, my y-intercept is going to be 0, -b, and 0, b, meaning that's where it's crossing there and crossing there. So that is my 0, b, and that is my 0, -b. Okay, let's see, what else does it say? My foci is -c, 0 and c, 0. So my foci then is saying that I've got -3, 0, and 3, 0. So what is my c then? My c is going to be the number 3. Okay? Because I said it right here. 3, 0, -3, 0. So -3, 0, 3, 0 is my foci. All right, and that's all I've got. One more equation, though, is they say c squared equals a squared minus b squared. Okay? So they're saying that if we take the distance from here to here and square it, minus the distance from here to here and square it, we're going to get the distance from here to here squared. Okay, so that's what this means right here. So let's look at all this information and see if we can write this as an equation. All right, so let's go ahead and let's find out what our vertex is. And we know our vertex is our -5, 0. So we know my a squared is actually 5. So let's continue on with this. This is x squared over 5 squared. And I know my y, or my b squared. No, in fact, I don't know my b squared, do I? I mean, I have a y-intercept here, but nobody's told me what my b is. But what I do know is what my c is. We said our c was 3, so let's write that up there. C is 3, and we know our a is 5 from right here. So I can find out what my c is, or my b is, based on c squared equals a squared minus b squared, because I know my two of them. So let's go ahead and do that. Let's see if we can move some of this up. And I know my c is 3, so 3 squared equals a is 5 minus b squared. So 9 equals 25 minus b squared. 9 minus 25 is negative 16 equals negative b squared. So that tells me, that my b squared is 16, or my b is equal to 4. So I'm going to take that 4, and let's move back up here to this equation right here. And now we found our b, so I can put a 4 in there and square it, and that equals 1. Okay, and for some reason I put a 0 there, now that I notice that, and that needs to be a 1. Sorry about that. So this equation right here is my answer. Actually, it's x squared over 25 plus y squared over 16 equals 1, and that'll be the equation then of the ellipse. And it's pretty easy to graph then, because I know that my I don't really care what my foci are. All I'm interested in is my y-intercepts, which is 4 and -4, because I'm just looking right here, because those are my b's. My b's are my y-intercepts, I said right here. So that's 4 and -4. My a is 5 and -5, so I can find this point, this point, this point, and this point, and I know it's in the on the center. So I just kind of draw an estimated ellipse there, and I'm good to go.